questions related to finances and everything. So thank you, Alex, for joining us today.
Very welcome.
So Alex, you're our treasurer at HTL. I'm just going to ask you a few quick questions. So firstly, why do we set a budget?
Why do we set a budget? It's a very good question. So we set a budget because there's a practical reality to the spiritual vision that is set by the church. So the budget process is obviously started by the church leadership listening to God and seeing what God is leading us into over the next 12 months from a budgeting perspective. And then we try and work out the reality of what that looks like financially. And then we set aside some money for different things that we think are important that God is leading us into. So that's why we set a budget. Otherwise, it's a total free-for-all, which is not what we like.
So two kind of related questions. What was our budget set for this year? And, how are we doing and what's impacting that and everything?
So the budget we set for this year was a deficit, which basically means a loss of £30,000. You might think that's a bad thing, and it's not a great thing in the long term. But coming out of COVID and lockdowns and the challenges that we face as a country and what we feel God is calling us into, we felt that it was manageable for a year. And then as we move forward through our journey, we hope not to be making losses in future years. In terms of how we're doing,
Yeah, in terms of how we're doing
with that, it's funny, isn't it, how God works? We set a budget of income based on previous years because we didn't want to set any kind of unrealistic expectation. And in the giving, both one-off, irregular giving and the regular giving that you as a church have provided has gone above and beyond what we anticipated would come in. So I just want to echo my thanks into what James has already shared. The unfortunate reality of that is interest rates have drastically increased, which means that some of our mortgage costs have increased accordingly, as well as utility bills, as you will have all felt personally, have gone up. And that's been a struggle as well. So we're still making a loss as we kind of planned, but it's nowhere near as big a loss as what we anticipated, which is great news.
So when it comes to giving in general, what would you like to say to the HTL church family from your treasurer perspective?
From my treasurer perspective, keep giving. Give some more, because then we can do more with what you guys and what God has in store for us. But I was thinking about this question because they were pre-planned, thankfully. And I think my perspective on it is giving and being generous is a journey that everyone has to take. No one ever gets it perfect, but it is a spiritual thing that has a practical outworking. And what James was sharing there around the blessings that are received from a generous giver are things that I've experienced. Not saying I experience it every week, but it's something that is a very real blessing. And I think just that reminder that giving is a spiritual thing and is part of worship. And sometimes we wait for God to meet us, and sometimes we have to go out and meet God. And we do that in worship, whether we're lifting our hands in response to God or lifting our hands in order to reach for God. And I think it's the same with our finances. And there are times where we have to wait and receive and then give. And then there's times where we have to be more proactive. So that would be my reflection.
Thanks, Alex. One last question. In terms of regular giving, why is regular giving and planned giving helpful for us as a church?
I think it's helpful from a practical perspective. It's helpful for us to know what's coming in. We have some very real, practical monthly costs, not James's salary. Thank goodness, he's very expensive. But in terms of a lot of other non-clergy staff, most of that is paid for out of your giving. So that practically helps us. And I think from a spiritual perspective, if I have the ability to go there, it helps set that kind of expectation in terms of you don't have to worry about it. You know that's just a natural part of your giving. And then you can consider the additional giving on top of that to the church or to other charities and activities that you feel passionate about.
Thank you, Alex. That's really helpful. Thank you.